After Beru loses the fight against Bellion, he begs Jinwoo for a rematch. Jinwoo questions why Beru wants the Grand Marshal position so badly, and Beru explains that he always wanted to keep fighting by his side. Jinwoo comes up with a simple solution and offers Beru the position to stand on his left side while the Grand Marshal stands on his right. Beru, unable to hold back his tears, starts crying, and Jinwoo requests him to stop. Suddenly, Igris also requests a chance to be the Grand Marshal. Jinwoo mentions that Igris can stand behind him. He notices all the shadows gathering and wonders what they are up to. Out of nowhere, all the dragon shadows fire into the sky. Tusk smirks, mocking their firepower, and uses the Orb of Avarice to fire a massive flame into the sky that ripples across the entire island. The rest of the shadows start praising Tusk, and Tusk gives a thumbs up to his supporters. The dragon shadows feel disappointed, realizing that their flame power is nothing compared to Tusk's Hymn of Fire Dragon. Jinwoo thinks to himself that Tusk is cheating by using the Orb of Avarice. He notices a group of ant shadows carrying trunks and questions what they are doing. Bellion explains that the ant shadows are building a small house for Jinwoo to rest on the island. Jinwoo guesses that Beru might be behind this idea. Bellion, out of curiosity, asks why Jinwoo does not call back his soldiers into his shadow. Jinwoo reveals that he wants his shadows to have some breathing space, as they have spent a long time inside the dimensional rift. Jinwoo asks if Bellion misses his former Shadow Monarch. Bellion responds that he willingly became the first shadow when Ashborn obtained the power to command death. He explains that he fought alongside the Shadow Monarch against the rulers when they opposed the Absolute Being, and that he was with him for almost eternity and never doubted his judgment. Jinwoo requests more stories about their past. Bellion begins by explaining that he was a fruit hanging on the world tree before becoming a shadow. He reveals that all heavenly soldiers are born as fruits of the world tree, and adds that the tree is so massive it can cover the entire sky with its branches. Jinwoo becomes intrigued by this new information and decides to warn everyone about the 8 monarch armies that could attack Earth at any moment. He emphasizes that they should be especially careful of the Dragon King, as he has witnessed Antares' real strength through Ashborn's memories. Jinwoo returns home and prepares a buffet of dishes for his family. His mother is surprised to see that he can cook so well. However, Jinwoo remains preoccupied with thoughts of the danger posed by Antares and realizes the need to prepare all the hunters to fight alongside him against the monarchs. His mother notices his unease and questions if something is wrong. She mentions that his father used to cook before going on dangerous missions and remarks that Jinwoo has similar traits to his father. Jinwoo reassures her that everything is fine and notices a visitor outside the door. Jinwoo sees Mr. Yu, Jinho's father, waiting outside, and Mr. Yu requests a few moments of his time. He begins by talking about his recovery from eternal slumber and how he initially thought he was special. After careful thought, he realized that Jinwoo might be behind it, since he and his mother are the only 2 people in the world who have woken up from eternal slumber. Mr. Yu asks why Jinwoo helped him, and Jinwoo explains that Mr. Yu struck him as a trustworthy person because he did not act desperately to make Jinwoo cure his eternal slumber. Mr. Yu asks if Jinwoo would have refused to help him if he had used Jinho to force him to cure the disease. Jinwoo clarifies that he would not help him if he had used Jinho. Mr. Yu pleads for a way to repay Jinwoo's kindness. Jinwoo calmly states that he does not want anything in return, but suddenly remembers his family and requests Mr. Yu to take care of them if something happens to him. Mr. Yu gladly accepts Jinwoo's request. Meanwhile, the scene shifts to Chairman Wu, who shows the colossal gate that has spawned in China. He mentions that 7 similar gates have appeared across the world simultaneously. Chairman wonders if the magic beasts that will emerge from the gates might be Jinwoo's army. Jinwoo clarifies that they are enemies and boldly asks if Chairman Wu trusts him. Chairman Wu starts sweating and assures Jinwoo that he completely trusts him. Jinwoo steps closer and hopes that Chairman Wu will believe what he is about to show. Jinwoo shares all of Ashborn's memories with Chairman Wu. Chairman Wu drops to his knees as he overwhelmed by the shocking truth about the rulers and monarchs. He reveals that he always believed the gods gave them special powers to save humanity from magic beasts, but now realizes he misunderstood everything. Chairman Wu understands that only awakened beings will survive the war, and that the war is actually between the monarchs and rulers, not between monarchs and humans. He realizes that Earth is merely being used as their battlefield. Chairman Wu asks if Jinwoo plans to fight all the monarchs alone. Jinwoo confirms that he does, and Chairman Wu agrees to help him to the best of his ability. Chairman Wu gathers important officials from from 152 countries at Jinwoo's request. One member notices that Chairman Wu looks more nervous than usual and asks what Jinwoo told him. Chairman Wu explains that he saw a large number of dragons emerging from the darkness and how they could burn the entire earth with a single breath. Chairman Wu wonders how Jinwoo plans to defeat the monarchs. He calls Jinwoo to inform him that all the officials have arrived and asks about his whereabouts. Jinwoo suddenly appears behind him using his shadow exchange skill. Chairman Wu remarks that there is no point in asking Jinwoo about his location anymore. He worries that the officials might panic if they learn the truth about the gates and magic beasts. Jinwoo calmly states that he is aware of the danger, but insists that this is their only way to win against the monarchs. Meanwhile, the conference begins, and Brennon is amazed to see all the important members from each country gathered based on Jinwoo's request. He hopes that Jinwoo will reassure them that everything will end well, just like the last time he fought the monarchs. Jinwoo starts speaking and shocks everyone by stating that this will be a tough time for all of them. He warns that the monarchs can destroy everything in their sight in no time. One individual refuses to believe Jinwoo's warning and claims that the national-level hunters can stop the monarchs. Jinwoo boldly informs them that not even national-level hunters will be able to stop the monarchs, as there will be hundreds of beasts stronger than the dragon Kaamish. The officials demand proof and question if Jinwoo has lost his mind. Suddenly, Jinwoo creates multiple gates, which causes panic among the officials as they realize that Jinwoo has the ability to create a large number of gates at the same time. Jinwoo explains that he can create gates whenever he wants and reveals that the monarchs have the same ability. He adds that the monarchs are taking time because they have a massive army to prepare. One of the members, unable to process this information, angrily accuses Jinwoo of being on the monarch's side. He questions if Jinwoo is summoning the soldiers himself to kill them and declares that he does not trust anything Jinwoo says. Connor interrupts the conversation and asks for more details about the type of beasts they can expect from the Colossal Gate and how to handle the situation. Jinwoo firmly declares that they should run as far away from the gate as possible. Jinwoo's warning creates a ripple effect and fear spreads among the officials. Everyone becomes terrified of the magic beasts that might break out from the gates, and they scramble to get as far away as possible. Meanwhile, Jinwoo travels to a remote island and sees a large castle constructed for him. Jinwoo feels displeased and commands Beru to put his head to the ground. He questions why Beru built a large castle instead of a small house. Beru nervously explains that Jinwoo deserves a house of this size. Jinwoo becomes irritated when he notices a flag, and Bellion also puts his head to the ground, revealing that the flag was his idea. Unexpectedly, Jinwoo asks Bellion what would happen to his shadows if he dies, and if the Grand Marshal would take his place. Bellion reveals that if anything happens to Jinwoo, all his shadows would return to nothingness, as their lives are tied to their king's existence. Jinwoo realizes that the greatest strength of his army is their loyalty, which makes them prioritize their master's orders over their own lives. He understands that the monarch's army will try to exploit this loyalty to their advantage. Igris mentions that their army will not stand a chance against the monarch's army in an all-out war. Jinwoo questions Bellion if he knows the exact size of the monarch's army. Bellion estimates that the monarchs might have an army more than 100 times greater than theirs. Jinwoo comprehends that the monarchs could have as many as 10 million soldiers. Meanwhile, the scene shifts to Jay Mills, who is a Canadian S-rank hunter. He criticizes Jinwoo for declaring that everyone should stay away from the gates. The reporter suggests that Jinwoo's warning should not be ignored, as he is one of the most skilled hunters in the world. Jay dismisses this and argues that they should not blindly believe everything Jinwoo says, even though he is the strongest hunter. He boldly claims that he is not afraid of Jinwoo's words and accuses Jinwoo of planning to take control of all the gates for himself. Meanwhile, Chairman Wu shows the footage of Jay's interview and informs that all the hunters in Canada are rallying around Jay Mills. He adds that a few countries like India with their strongest hunters are planning to start their own raids and asks Jinwoo what they should do about it. Jinwoo decides to eliminate the closest threat to Korea and focus on China first, as it is impossible for him to face all 8 armies at once. Jinwoo understands that prolonging the war increases his chances of winning and decides to deal with the other monarchs later. Jinwoo arrives at the China airport and sees Liu Zhigang waiting for him. Jinwoo remarks that he was told government officials would greet him, but never expected to see Liu Zhigang. Liu Zhigang explains that he decided to escort Jinwoo himself after seeing their officials making ridiculous posters for him. Jinwoo notices the Colossal Gate from the airport, and Liu Zhigang introduces 100,000 of China's strongest hunters. Jinwoo is intrigued by the large number of hunters and feels a glimmer of hope that they might actually win. Liu Zhigang confidently states that every single hunter is a highly skilled elite. Suddenly, Jinwoo summons his shadow shadows, which startles Liu Zhigang. The entire area fills with all 1 million of Jinwoo's shadows. Out of nowhere, Beru becomes frustrated with Liu Zhigang and declares that the left spot of his king belongs to him. Jinwoo asks Beru to calm down and explains that Liu Zhigang is on their side. Liu Zhigang realizes that Jinwoo can even communicate with his summoned beasts. Meanwhile, the gate cracks open and Bellion strangely senses no presence of enemies around the gate. Jinwoo requests Bellion to check the other gates. Bellion communicates with the other shadows and reports that the situation is the same at all the gates. Jinwoo wonders why all the colossal gates are empty and suddenly understands the reason. He realizes that the monarchs might decide to attack a gate farthest from him instead of attacking around the world. The scene shifts to a gate in Canada, where all the hunters prepare to start the raid. Jay Mills mocks those who trusted Jinwoo's prophecy. It is revealed that Russia and Japan have decided to help Jinwoo with the gate in China. Fortunately, no colossal gate has spawned in Japan, and everyone wonders if Jinwoo's warning will come true. The citizens of Canada support their hunters' decision to ignore Jinwoo's warning and express confidence in their hunters to protect their land. Suddenly, the gate cracks open and no beasts emerge. The hunters begin to think that Jinwoo might have been bluffing. Unexpectedly, an individual steps through the gate. The hunters see a single magic beast looking down at them. Jay Mills is confused and wonders if the figure might be human. Antares asks Jay if he is the king of their land. Jay becomes nervous, hearing Antares speak in human language. One of the hunters explains that some beasts possess intelligence equal to humans and are capable of making their own armor and establishing societies based on class systems. Jay Mills is intrigued by the possibility of communicating with the beasts. He speculates that Jinwoo might have recruited his shadows from the first colossal gate in Korea in a similar way. Jay wonders if the beast will obey him if he claims to be the king and asks what Antares will do if he declares himself the king. Antares ignores him and notices that Jinwoo is not present at their location. Meanwhile, the scene shifts to China, where Jinwoo tries to contact Canada for an update on the gate. He suddenly remembers Adam White from the Federal Bureau of Hunters and decides to call him. Jinwoo asks about the colossal gate and senses something is wrong while talking to Adam. He asks about Adam's location. Adam reveals that he is at the gate in Canada to provide backup. Jinwoo questions why Adam is in Canada since he is not a hunter. Adam explains that they cannot ignore their neighboring country and that he is one of the agents from the Federal Bureau dispatched to Canada. Jinwoo becomes upset that no one is taking his warning seriously and asks if anything unusual has happened at the gate. Adam reports that everything seems fine and that the gate in Canada is empty. Suddenly, Adam informs Jinwoo that an individual resembling a human has emerged from the gate. Jinwoo urges Adam to run away immediately, but Adam is frozen in place, unable to comprehend how a single beast burned all the top-ranking hunters in an instant. Adam describes how all the elite hunters have been turned to ashes. Jinwoo urges him to escape, and Adam reports that countless dragons are descending from the gate. Jinwoo decides to save Adam and tries to contact the shadow he planted on him. Suddenly, a high orc shadow grabs Adam and Jinwoo informs him that he will teleport him to safety. Adam notices Antares approaching him with a deathly gaze and becomes completely overwhelmed by his presence. Antares uses his breath of destruction to kill both the High Orc Shadow and Adam White. Jinwoo feels terrible for not foreseeing this outcome. He understands that his shadow army will grow stronger as the battle drags on, but realizes that Antares is trying to shorten the war by gathering all his forces in one place. The monarchs plan to use the 8 gates as distractions and sent their entire army into the gate furthest from Jinwoo. This strategy forces Jinwoo into an all-out war. Jinwoo reflects on how his plan has been completely disrupted and worries that there might be nothing he can do to turn the odds in his favor. Antares enjoys the massive destruction and the screams of humans. He declares that the sound of human demise is like music to his ears. The entire country of Canada is overrun with dragons, and all the cities are engulfed in flames. Antares meets with the other monarchs and commands them to destroy everything in their path. Meanwhile, the scene shifts to Brennon, who watches the destruction unfold on TV. He is in disbelief that all his agents and Canadian hunters are dead. He feels a deep sadness as he realizes that the disaster is beyond human intervention. Brennon worries that America might be the next target and finally understands why Jinwoo warned everyone to stay as far away from the gates as possible. He decides to have his final whiskey before the end of the world. Suddenly, Jinwoo appears using his shadow exchange skill, which startles Brennon and brings him back to his senses. Jinwoo apologizes for the intrusion and requests the runestone from the dragon Kaamish. Brennon explains that the runestone belongs to their country, but quickly realizes that the stone will mean nothing if their country is destroyed. He decides to give the runestone to Jinwoo and asks what he plans to do with the runestone. Jinwoo explains that he needs the stone to counter the monarch's plan. Brennon seeks clarification and asks why the rulers left the runestones inside the magic beasts. Jinwoo reveals that the runestones are gifts from the rulers designed to help hunters hunt magic beasts more efficiently. He adds that the rulers' ultimate plan is to increase mana on Earth by making humans fight the magic beasts and sacrificing some humans for the greater cause. He further adds that when a magic beast dies, all its abilities are sealed within the runestone. Brennon asks if Jinwoo truly believes he can win the battle. Jinwoo admits that he is not sure, but requests another favor from Brennon. Both Brennon and Jinwoo visit Selner late at night. Selner is surprised by their unexpected visit and remarks that Jinwoo seems like a different person. She explains that Jinwoo used to be possessed by darkness, but now he has become the darkness itself. Jinwoo calmly states that he is still the same person, but has embraced the darkness that Selner saw in him before. Jinwoo asks if Selner can foresee the future and requests her to look into his future. Selner is taken aback by his request, but after a moment of thought, she agrees to help him. She holds his hand and suddenly starts crying. She asks if Jinwoo truly intends to bear the entire burden alone. Jinwoo feels reassured that his plan is on the right track. Still crying, Selner questions if Jinwoo plans to sacrifice himself to protect everything, and heartbroken that a single human would carry the weight of protecting the entire world. Jinwoo explains that he is happy knowing that everyone else will be safe. Selner becomes frustrated at his words and laments that no one will remember his heroic actions and that his fight will be a lonely one. Jinwoo suddenly excuses himself and uses his shadow exchange skill to appear on top of a building. Jinwoo decides to call Hae-In one last time. Hae-In is surprised to hear from him, and Jinwoo explains that he has been busy lately. Hae-In mentions that they have not had time to catch up because of the gates and the ongoing battles. Jinwoo confidently assures her that they will meet again. Hae-In asks him to promise that he will return to see her. Jinwoo promises as she requested. Hae-In feels happy after talking to Jinwoo, but is interrupted when Choi Jong-in informs her that they need to leave. All the South Korean hunters along with S-rank hunters from China and Japan have joined forces. Thomas also decides to help in the fight, and hundreds of thousands of hunters are on their way to Canada to face the Monarchs. Antares grows impatient and wonders why Jinwoo has not shown up to fight him despite the millions of humans he has killed. Eventually, Antares becomes bored and starts to question if Jinwoo will ever show up to face him. Antares is confused about why Jinwoo remains silent despite all the destruction and wonders what he is planning. He speculates that Jinwoo might be afraid of his 10 million magic beasts and believes it would be suicide for Jinwoo to fight with his shadows. He assumes Jinwoo has probably run to the ends of the earth. Suddenly, Antares is struck by a missile, but it shatters before reaching him. More missiles are launched at him, and a massive blast occurs that shakes the entire city. The missile crew member believes he has killed the enemy, but is shocked when huge flames erupt from Antares. Antares transforms into a giant dragon using spiritual body manifestation and becomes irritated at being attacked with such weak weapons. He unleashes his breath attack and effortlessly destroys the aircraft. Meanwhile, the scene shifts to the castle, where Jinwoo is deep in thought about how to defeat the Monarchs. He notices the words "My King" written on the wall and remembers how he made Beru bow with his head to the ground. He feels happy about Beru's kind gesture and thanks him for building the castle. Beru starts crying as he worries about his king's safety. Bellion expresses concern about Jinwoo's dangerous plan, and Igris agrees with him. Jinwoo understands that his shadows are worried about him and explains that sometimes they need to attack overpowered enemies in unexpected ways. He remarks that Ashborn admired him for his approach to dealing with overwhelming enemies. Jinwoo asks Bellion what the former Shadow Monarch would do in his position. Bellion recalls how Ashborn was in his ruler form and explains that he would stop at nothing and attack the enemy with everything he had. Jinwoo smiles at Bellion's response, and Bellion is surprised by how much Jinwoo resembles Ashborn in his methods of dealing with enemies. He finally understands why the former Shadow Monarch chose Jinwoo. Bellion, Igris, and Beru kneel before Jinwoo and express their desire to stand by their king until the very end. Jinwoo decides to implement his plan, and they all prepare to head out. Suddenly, Jinwoo checks his phone, and Bellion advises him to contact his family as it might be his last chance. However, Jinwoo decides not to call them as he fears hearing their voices might make him change his mind. He worries that he might not move forward with his plan and decides to break his phone into pieces. Meanwhile, the scene shifts back to Canada, where Antares continues attacking the remaining aircraft. He eventually destroys it completely. However, one crew member successfully escapes and lands safely. Another crew member sees him, but is suddenly eaten alive by a magic beast. The surviving crew member notices something approaching him and turns to see a magic beast trying to devour him. He barely escapes and finds a weapon nearby. He grabs it and fires continuously at the magic beast, but the gun runs out of bullets. The magic beast approaches him, and he gives up on his life. He closes his eyes, but when he opens them, he finds the magic beast dead and sees Jinwoo standing with a pair of daggers. Jinwoo tells him to run away, but the crew member is still in shock at the sight of Jinwoo. Suddenly, a group of magic beasts tries to attack Jinwoo, and the crew member warns him about the approaching enemies. Jinwoo uses his commander's authority to freeze them in midair and slashes all of them in an instant. He takes the first step to start the war and raises the shadows using shadow extraction. Antares senses Jinwoo's presence and remarks that the Shadow Monarch has appeared on the Eastern Front. Yogamund suggests launching a full-scale attack on Jinwoo, while Tarnak informs that Jinwoo is not carrying his shadows with him and has split them into groups. Antares speculates that Jinwoo might be planning to take out his forces single-handedly. He feels confident that Jinwoo is avoiding an all-out war, but remains confused about the Shadow Monarch's actual plan. Meanwhile, the scene shifts to Chairman Wu, who watches the news on TV. The newsreader reports that contact with the Canadian hunters has been lost, and that the U.S. government is dispatching military forces to buy time for civilian evacuations. Chairman Wu remarks that all hell has broken loose on the other side of the planet. He observes that even with the strongest military force, America has fallen victim to the beasts. He prays for a miracle and tries to hold back his tears as he begs God to show mercy on them. The scene shifts back to the battlefield, where the shadows begin attacking the magic beasts. They gradually clear the area by slashing through the beasts. Meanwhile, Jinwoo continues his rampage and slashes a giant magic beast. Suddenly, he notices another giant attempting to squash him, and a single strike shakes the ground. Jinwoo leaps away and dashes toward the giant, slashing its leg and causing it to fall. The dragon's shadows follow up by biting its throat with their sharp teeth. Jinwoo looks up at the sky and sees countless dragons attacking him. He remarks that he cannot sense Antares' presence and realizes that they are still holding back from going all out. Jinwoo decides not to be disappointed by Antares' absence, as there is still time. He resolves to make Antares take the first move and uses shadow extraction to raise more shadows. A large dragon shadow arises and devours another dragon completely. A giant shadow emerges, but is instantly killed by a dragon's breath attack. The dragon becomes furious that Jinwoo is opposing their Dragon King with mere shadow puppets made of mana and vows to destroy their king's enemy in his honor. To its surprise, Jinwoo appears behind it and comments that it talks too much. Before the dragon can react, Jinwoo charges at it and slashes its head. Antares realizes that Jinwoo is growing stronger with each battle and orders his forces to attack. He commands Yogamund to stay behind and prepare for the Shadow Monarch's ambush. Antares resolves to make Jinwoo pay and vows not to let him escape for his betrayal. Meanwhile, the scene shifts to a battle between the military and the giants. A soldier orders his team to attack the giants' legs to restrict their movements and buy time until reinforcements arrive. Suddenly, a magic beast devours one of the soldiers, and another beast charges at them. An individual appears and punches the beast, sending it flying. Thomas arrives to assist and confidently states that he has fought common beasts in dungeons before, and that these magic beasts stand no chance against them, even if they are outnumbered. Suddenly, Thomas senses a strange presence. Tarnak recognizes him from his fight with Rakan and calls him a weak vessel who almost died at the hands of the Monarch of Fangs. Tarnak introduces himself as the Monarch of Steel. He warns Thomas that he can end his life in an instant and questions why he is standing against him despite being outnumbered. To everyone's surprise, Thomas summons all the shadows hiding within his own shadow. Bellion greets Tarnak and remarks that it has been a while since they last met. Tarnak is shocked to see the large number of shadows and realizes that Thomas has been hiding them. He understands that he has been baited by the Shadow Monarch and decides to inform Antares about Jinwoo's plan. However, Tarnak is unable to contact Antares and notices a shadow using magic to block all communication. The shadow is Tusk, who uses his Orb of Avarice to disrupt all signals between the monarchs. Tarnak wonders how the Shadow Monarch came up with such a plan. He realizes that this is not how they usually fight, as they typically engage their enemies head-on. He finally understands that this strategy must have been devised by a human. Tarnak angrily remarks that a mere human has no right to be the Shadow Monarch. Beru becomes enraged and warns Tarnak to take back his words or face the consequences for insulting his king. Tarnak becomes annoyed that a mere shadow is threatening him and uses spiritual body manifestation to transform. Meanwhile, both Jinwoo and Antares begin walking toward each other. Both Jinwoo and Antares start gazing at each other. Antares is unable to contact Tarnak and wonders if he has been betrayed. He questions Jinwoo if cutting off communication is part of his scheme and suddenly launches a breath attack. He warns Jinwoo that he will kill him for this. Jinwoo is momentarily stunned by the intensity of the flames, and the attack melts the entire area. Antares searches for Jinwoo and notices a shadow carrying him. Jinwoo summons his shadows, and a large number of them charge at Antares, and Antares prepares himself for battle. Meanwhile, the scene shifts to Liu Zhigang, who slices a giant into pieces with a single attack. Liu Zhigang grows confident that he can handle the giants. He recalls how difficult it was the last time when he fought giants at sea. He senses a large amount of mana in the air and guesses that hundreds of thousands of hunters are fighting countless magic beasts everywhere. Liu Zhigang notices the mana waves coming from Jinwoo and Antares' battle and remarks that the magic power is so intense it feels like his entire body is being pricked even from a far distance. The scene shifts back to the battle, where Antares uses his flame magic to destroy all the shadows with a single attack. Antares realizes that the Shadow Monarch has sent his main army to attack Tarnok and is fighting him with weaker shadows. Suddenly, Antares sees a large blue portal and wonders if Jinwoo is trying to escape. Antares decides not to let Jinwoo get away and dashes toward the portal. He is surprised to see a large number of shadows and finds Tarnok killed by both Bellion and Beru. Antares ignores Tarnok and realizes that the Shadow Monarch defeated him by distracting him. He acknowledges it as a good strategy, but grows frustrated with Jinwoo's indirect attacks. Yogamont opens a large number of gates, and Antares dismisses Jinwoo's plan. He declares that he is not chasing Jinwoo and summons a countless beasts that pour out of the gates. Antares explains that Jinwoo has miscalculated his plan and boasts that he can summon as many magic beasts as he wants through the gates. He claims that this misjudgment will cost Jinwoo his life. However, Jinwoo smirks at Antares and suddenly cancels his summons. Antares is confused and wonders why Jinwoo has canceled his summons. He assumes that Jinwoo is giving up after realizing the overwhelming difference in their powers. Jinwoo looks up at the large number of beasts and closes his eyes. Suddenly, Antares is shocked as Jinwoo uses the power he gained from absorbing the rune stone of dragon Kaamish. The rune stone grants a special power that is the worst enemy of the dragon army. A single roar can incapacitate everyone and plunge them into despair. The skill called Dragon Fear stops all the dragons in midair and even incapacitates Yogamont. Antares is in disbelief that the roar has frozen a monarch and rendered him incapable of moving. Jinwoo implements his plan and grabs Antares using his shadow exchange skill to transport them to his island. Antares realizes that Jinwoo orchestrated everything for this single moment and questions about the location. Jinwoo reveals that the island is on the opposite side of the world from where his army is. Antares is impressed by Jinwoo's strategy of bringing him to a remote place, as an all-out war would drain his mana, and this way Jinwoo has the advantage. Suddenly, Antares notices a castle and asks if it belongs to Jinwoo. Jinwoo becomes slightly flustered by the question. Antares comments that the place is unimpressive and remarks that a monarch's residence should be far more massive. Jinwoo draws his dagger and confidently declares that the castle is the perfect place to kill the Monarch of Destruction. Antares understands Jinwoo's plan and realizes that the fight is about whether he can last until his army finds him. Antares uses spiritual body manifestation and transforms into a massive dragon. In response, Jinwoo summons his shadows. Meanwhile, the scene shifts to the Federal Bureau of Hunters Association. Selner looks outside and sees flames erupting from the building. She understands that hunters are fighting against the magic beasts. Brennon reflects on the turbulent waves of mana spreading throughout their country and acknowledges that everything Jinwoo said has come true. He worries about the future of the entire world. Selner reminds him that Sung Jinwoo is not the only hunter fighting, and that countless S-rank and E-rank hunters have thrown themselves into the battle. She explains that the difference between humans and E-rank hunters is that E-rank hunters are only slightly stronger than normal humans. E-rank hunters can strengthen their armor and weapons using mana and are aware of the small contribution they make to the battle. She adds that E-rank hunters can kill one beast, while D-rank hunters can kill 3, and C-rank hunters can kill 10. She notes that even though S-rank hunters can kill thousands of beasts, they will eventually meet their end and join the countless stars in the sky. Selner concludes that while individual efforts may seem insignificant when hunters join forces and they tend to fight like a meteor shower, this approach would create the possibility of a future, and this is what people call hope. Meanwhile, the scene shifts to Chairman Wu. One of the members informs him that Jinwoo has successfully lured Antares to a remote island off the coast of Japan. Chairman Wu recalls Jinwoo mentioning the island and remembers the tremendous amount of mana released when he fought the gate full of giants. He realizes that Jinwoo is trying to minimize damage by fighting on the island, and wonders if Jinwoo has been hiding there all along. The member requests permission to dispatch hunters to the island, but Chairman Wu denies the request, explaining that all S-rank hunters are currently fighting in America. Chairman sarcastically suggests sending E-rank hunters and remarks that Jinwoo was also an E-rank hunter before his reawakening. The member is shocked by this, and Chairman Wu comments that even an E-rank hunter can become a hero. Meanwhile, the scene shifts to the battle between Jinwoo and Antares. Jinwoo charges at Antares on Kaisel. Antares tries to attack him with his breath attack, but Shadow uses a sword that works like a centipede to close Antares' mouth. A giant shadow holds the sword, while the rest of the giant shadows charge at Antares and slam him to the ground. Tusk follows up with a lightning magic attack that sends shockwaves across the battlefield. Both Beru and Greed leap at Antares, attacking his face and breaks his spiritual body manifestation. Igris joins the fight and uses lightning magic. The coordinated attacks from the shadows render Antares immobile. Jinwoo feels a bit of confidence as his attacks seem to be working. To everyone's surprise, Antares opens his eyes and remarks that he is enjoying the fight. He declares that crushing his enemies himself is more fun than using his army. Jinwoo is visibly shaken as he realizes that his attacks have not worked. Antares unleashes the ultimate dragon fear roar. The shockwaves from the roar completely destroy the shadows. Jinwoo feels the intensity of the waves and realizes that he cannot command his shadows at this rate. He decides to cancel his summons. Antares gives Jinwoo no chance to recover and unleashes a flame attack that obliterates the entire land. Jinwoo is separated from Kaisel and commands him to return. Antares remarks that this is his true full power. He declares that he does not care if he sacrifices himself to create massive destruction, as this is the reason he was born. Antares introduces himself as the King of the Berserk Dragons and the Monarch of Destruction. Jinwoo reflects that the land was already infused with a lot of mana when the King of Giants died, but he still cannot hold his ground against Antares. He realizes that even an immortal soldier cannot withstand Antares' breath attack. Antares calmly approaches Jinwoo and tells him not to be nervous. He explains that he could have broken free when Jinwoo brought him to the remote island, but chose to come willingly as he was impressed by Jinwoo's strategy. Antares requests a moment to have a quiet conversation as fellow monarchs. He explains that the rulers are the true enemies of the monarchs and that their mission is to exterminate the monarchs born from darkness. He warns that not even the Shadow Monarch can escape the rulers. Antares reveals that he plans to fight the rulers after defeating Jinwoo. He admits that Jinwoo's fighting spirit has changed his mind as Jinwoo possesses an ability different from Ashborn. Antares offers to spare Jinwoo's family and country from destruction and promises to leave Earth with his army. He proposes that Jinwoo become the monarch of Earth and praises him as more qualified than anyone else. Antares asks Jinwoo to join his forces and promises to stop the battle if Jinwoo takes his hand. He offers again the safety of Jinwoo's family and country. Jinwoo laughs at Antares' offer and remarks that he cannot trust someone whose eyes are filled with bloodlust. Antares laughs back, realizing that Jinwoo has seen through his plan. Both Jinwoo and Antares decide not to hold back. Antares, with a sinister smile, declares that there will be no second chance for Jinwoo and warns that he will show no mercy. He tells Jinwoo to prepare for their ultimate final battle. Antares charges at Jinwoo and transforms his hand into a massive claw-like hand to strike him. Jinwoo barely evades the attack and quickly summons Kaisel. Antares decides to transform into his full dragon form, using spiritual body manifestation, and unleashes a powerful breath attack aimed at Jinwoo. Jinwoo commands Kaisel to descend rapidly to dodge the attack and uses the opportunity to leap into Antares' blind spot. With precision and speed, Jinwoo slashes Antares multiple times. Antares roars in pain, and Jinwoo swiftly gets back on Kaisel. However, to Jinwoo's shock, there is not a single scratch on Antares' body. Antares remarks that such weak attacks cannot harm him and mocks Jinwoo's futile efforts. Jinwoo realizes the overwhelming difference in their power and decides to create some distance between himself and Antares. Before he can retreat, Antares unleashes his dragon's fearsome roar, which completely incapacitates Kaisel. Kaisel struggles to move and finds himself immobilized by the sheer force of the roar. Despite his condition, Kaisel resolves to save Jinwoo at all costs. Kaisel grabs Jinwoo with his tail and hurls him away to safety. Jinwoo understands Kaisel's intention and watches in horror as Antares targets Kaisel with a devastating breath attack. Kaisel is struck by the attack, and though Jinwoo narrowly avoids it, the force of the blast sends him crashing into the ground. The breath attack reshapes the entire landscape of the island, leaving it scorched. Antares observes the destruction and realizes that his previous attack was not enough to kill Jinwoo. Out of nowhere, Jinwoo charges at Antares once more. As he approaches, Jinwoo notices that Antares' exterior resembles molten magma. Jinwoo attempts to break through the exoskeleton with a series of relentless attacks. Antares counters by attempting to slam Jinwoo with his massive hand, but Jinwoo senses the attack and leaps away just in time. Jinwoo summons his dragon shadows, and one of them clamps its jaws around Antares' throat, while another follows up with a fiery breath attack. The two dragon shadows work together, unleashing their flames in an effort to bring Antares down. However, Jinwoo quickly realizes that even Bellion's dragons are not strong enough to overpower the Dragon King. The fire breath attacks fail to inflict significant damage, and Jinwoo understands that his usual methods are ineffective against Antares. Jinwoo admits to himself that Antares' attacks and defenses are far superior to any enemy he has faced before. He knows he needs something far stronger to break through Antares' body. Meanwhile, Antares eliminates the dragon shadows with another breath attack and mocks Jinwoo for relying on such weak shadows. However, Antares suddenly senses a massive darkness surrounding Jinwoo and becomes confused about Jinwoo's true intentions. Jinwoo decides to harness the power of darkness to create an armor stronger than Antares' body. He resolves to transform into a massive living being that will dwarf everything else in comparison. Antares watches as the darkness around Jinwoo grows larger with each passing second. He begins to suspect that Jinwoo might be using spiritual body manifestation. Antares recalls that the Shadow Monarch is originally a fragment of brilliant light and should not possess any other forms. He wonders if Jinwoo has summoned the power of death to achieve this transformation. Antares is in disbelief that a mere human vessel is capable of wielding the power of death. Jinwoo looks at his hands and feels a moment of confusion, questioning if this transformation is truly his doing. He soon realizes that this might be the true power of the Shadow Monarch. An overwhelming and terrifying energy surges endlessly through his body, and Jinwoo begins to understand the full extent of his abilities. Antares observes Jinwoo's transformation and comes to a realization. He understands that Jinwoo has fought countless battles to survive and has now become a true Shadow Monarch. Antares finally grasps why Ashborn chose to pass his entire power to Jinwoo. Recognizing the threat to his survival, Antares decides to end the battle with a single decisive attack. He unleashes his most powerful fire breath attack, aiming to obliterate Jinwoo. In response, Jinwoo counters with his own attack. The two forces collide, and Jinwoo's attack nullifies Antares' breath attack and strikes him directly. The impact causes Antares to scream in pain. Both Jinwoo and Antares charge at each other in their final forms. Their immense power shakes the battlefield as they prepare for the ultimate clash that will determine the fate of the world. Antares attempts to strike Jinwoo, but Jinwoo effortlessly blocks the attack with a single hand and counters with a powerful punch to Antares' face. Antares screams in pain, and Jinwoo follows up with another attack. However, Antares grabs Jinwoo with his massive jaws and hurls him away. Jinwoo crashes to the ground, but quickly senses another attack coming. He barely dodges the breath attack, but his hand is caught in the blast and evaporates instantly. Jinwoo summons a sword forged from darkness and charges at Antares with determination. Antares retaliates with another breath attack, but Jinwoo blocks it using a shield created from his darkness. Jinwoo slashes Antares with his sword, but Antares counters by smashing him to the ground with his tail. Antares flies to the air and conjures multiple fireballs, which he hurls at Jinwoo. The attack devastates the ground, but Antares suddenly senses danger. An arrow made of darkness pierces through the air and cuts into his wing. Jinwoo summons more arrows and fires them at Antares in rapid succession. Antares counters by unleashing his fire breath attack. The arrows and the breath attack collide in midair and wrestle for dominance. Eventually, Antares' breath attack overpowers the arrows and strikes Jinwoo directly. The impact shatters Jinwoo's final form completely. Jinwoo is left exhausted and realizes that maintaining his ultimate power is incredibly draining. Antares reverts to his normal form and offers Jinwoo one final chance to join his side. Jinwoo uses reinforcement to boost his defenses and confidently rejects the offer. He declares that he would never align himself with a monster. Antares enhances his own defenses using the same technique and summons a sword. He calls Jinwoo a fool for refusing his offer. Both monarchs charge at each other with full force. Antares attempts to slash Jinwoo down, but Jinwoo blocks the attack with his daggers. Their weapons clash repeatedly as sparks fly from their intense battle. Antares warns Jinwoo that Yogamund and his dragon army are slaughtering everything. He taunts Jinwoo by saying that he is just a human who fears death despite being the king of the dead. Antares asks if Jinwoo wishes to be reduced to ashes by his flames. With a sinister smile, Antares repeats that Jinwoo will have nothing left to protect and strikes Jinwoo's dagger away. Jinwoo becomes irritated after losing his dagger. Antares seizes the opportunity and stabs Jinwoo through the stomach with his sword. Antares mocks Jinwoo by saying he will make him hear the screams of humans across the planet as his army of destruction feasts on them. Jinwoo leaps away to remove the sword from his body. Antares confidently declares that despair will spread like a disease and silence all of humanity. He adds that Jinwoo will regret not joining him. Jinwoo responds that Antares will regret going against humanity. Silently, Jinwoo uses his commander's authority to attempt a surprise attack by stabbing Antares from behind with his dagger. However, Antares effortlessly blocks the attack with shield magic. Antares remarks that a mere dagger made from a dragon fang cannot harm him. He comments that their fight is amusing, as one of them is a flame born from darkness, while the other is a darkness born from light. He declares that their battle will end very soon. Jinwoo agrees that the fight is nearing its conclusion. Antares asks if Jinwoo is giving up. Suddenly, Jinwoo dashes at Antares with incredible speed. Antares prepares to slash Jinwoo and confidently states that he does not need his army of destruction to defeat him. He claims that he will raise the morale of his forces by beheading Jinwoo. Jinwoo questions if Antares is unaware of the fact that the sun will always cast a shadow. Jinwoo summons all his shadows, which swarm Antares and immobilize him. Antares furiously warns that he will rip Jinwoo to pieces and feed him to his dragons. He vows to make Jinwoo's death a perfect example of what happens to those who oppose him. Jinwoo brings out his father's dagger, and Antares suddenly sees both Sung Ilhwan and Ashborn within Jinwoo. Jinwoo slashes Antares in half with a decisive strike and wonders if Antares can at least see his own end. As the attack lands, the sky shatters and several gates begin to open. Antares admits that he has lost to Jinwoo, even though it should have been impossible for him to be defeated. As he speaks, he notices a large number of rulers' soldiers emerging through the gates and becomes confused. He wonders how the rulers could send their army when there was no gate present when he first arrived on the island. Antares remarks that a tremendous amount of energy is required to connect the two realms and begins to understand what has happened. He recalls thinking that Jinwoo brought him to the remote island to avoid interruptions from his dragon army during their fight. Antares finally realizes Jinwoo's true intention. He understands that Jinwoo used the force of their clash to tear the space apart and summon his allies to the battlefield. He wonders how Jinwoo was able to communicate with the rulers. Jinwoo calmly explains that there's a way to contact the rulers through their vessels. Antares realizes that Jinwoo used the rulers' vessels to communicate with them and manipulated their fight to connect the two realms and bring the rulers' soldiers to defeat him. Antares accepts his defeat and praises Jinwoo for finding a way to win, even though he was supposed to lose. He admits that his failure to see the bigger picture has led to his downfall. Jinwoo asks Antares if he was the one who ordered the Monarch of White Flames and Rakan the Monarch of Fangs to attack the Shadow Monarch. Antares shockingly questions if the Monarch of White Flames told him that. Jinwoo responds by mentioning that Ashborn wanted to send his regards to Antares and shows him a big finger. Antares becomes furious, but before he can react, a few rulers' soldiers stab him. As he falls, he sees the greatest fragment of brilliant light. Antares speaks his final words and remarks that the world is always covered in darkness and radiant light. He admits that he might never have stood a chance against the Shadow Monarch and declares that he will wait for Jinwoo in the true eternal slumber rather than the false one created by Ashborn. Jinwoo reassures him not to worry and promises that he will join him soon. One of the rulers steps forward and thanks Jinwoo for ending the war. Jinwoo responds that he has a request to make and mentions that it is something only the rulers can do. The rulers agree to hear him out and promise to do everything in their power to aid him. To their surprise, Jinwoo requests the use of the Cup of Reincarnation one more time. The rulers pause to confirm if Jinwoo is truly asking them to use the Cup of Reincarnation to turn back time. They remind him that the monarchs will retain their memories and question if he still wishes to proceed despite the risks. Jinwoo explains that he is fully aware of the dangers and promises to handle the monarchs in the dimensional rift. He requests that the rulers refrain from sending anyone to Earth after turning back time. The rulers are puzzled by Jinwoo's confidence and ask how he plans to deal with all the monarchs on his own. They remind him that even after using the Cup of Reincarnation multiple times, they were unable to achieve such an impossible task. Jinwoo responds with sadness and explains that many lives were lost in the battle. He expresses his desire to bring back those lost lives. The rulers warn him that the Cup of Reincarnation is nearing its limit and may not be able to turn back time again if anything goes wrong. They inform Jinwoo that if he chooses not to use the cup, he will be remembered forever as the hero who ended the monarch's invasion. They add that there might be no one left to congratulate him if he succeeds, and ask once more if he still wishes to turn back time. Jinwoo takes a moment to think about his family and all his friends. With unwavering resolve, he confidently states that he still wishes to proceed with the plan. The rulers understand Jinwoo's determination to save the world with his own hands. They comment that his resolve reminds them of Ashborn, who carried a similar burden. They wish Jinwoo good luck in his fight against the monarchs. Jinwoo becomes concerned about the fate of his shadows and asks what will happen to them. The rulers reveal that shadows which conflict with the past will perish, while those that do not will remain. Jinwoo feels relieved knowing that he will retain most of his shadows and prepares himself for the final battle. The rulers bring forth the Cup of Reincarnation and wish Jinwoo success in saving the world once again. They activate the cup and turn back time to 10 years ago. A bright light begins to cover the entire Earth, and Jinho is busy with his phone, completely unconcerned about the light. Jinwoo's family and manager Woo are confused as they watch the strange phenomenon. Liu Zhigang observes the light with curiosity, while Thomas Andre remains focused on killing the magic beasts and pays no attention to the light. Hae-In and Choi Jong-in are shocked as they witness the brightness, but Baek Yoonho seems indifferent and does not care much about it. Suddenly, the scene shifts to Jinwoo's apartment, where Jinna is trying to wake up her brother. Jinwoo feels a wave of relief and happiness as he realizes his plan worked. He is shocked to see his father and calls out to confirm if it is really him. Sung Il-hwan responds that he should call him dad instead of father. Overwhelmed with emotion, Jinwoo starts crying and everyone is confused about why he is crying so suddenly. Jinwoo explains that he just had a nightmare and feels overjoyed to see his sister, his mother in good health, and even his father with them. Jinwoo understands that this is his last chance to set everything right and resolves not to waste this opportunity. He determines to change the future with his own hands. However, he decides to take a short break and enjoy the peaceful time with his family and friends as a reward for himself. Jinwoo is aware that the monarchs are preparing a giant gate across the sky to invade the Earth, but he chooses to enjoy the calm moments a little longer until the danger becomes imminent. One day, Jinwoo leaves a note on his desk, and his mother finds it. The note states that he has something important to take care of and will return once he finishes his business. His mother realizes that Jinwoo has left home. Meanwhile, the scene shifts to a battle between shadows and magic beasts. Beru swiftly slices off a beast's head, while Bellion creates a pile of beast corpses. The days in the world of darkness are painfully boring unless a battle occurs. After fighting most of the monarchs and defeating them, Jinwoo eventually encounters Yogamont. Despite some struggles, he manages to kill him. 27 years pass in the world of darkness as Jinwoo continues his battles. He finally reaches the end of the long war and realizes that only Antares and his army of destruction remain. Jinwoo feels fortunate that time on Earth moves at a slower pace and estimates that only 2 years might have passed since he left home. As he thinks about his family, he feels regret for not being able to explain his situation to them. Bellion informs Jinwoo that all of Yogamont's army has been destroyed. Jinwoo confidently declares that they will not lose a second time and uses his shadow extraction skill to raise more shadows. Meanwhile, the scene shifts to Antares, who is informed that Yogamont has been defeated. A dragon beast advises Antares to flee from Jinwoo, but Antares refuses. He states that he is tired of running and wants to face the Shadow Monarch in battle. Antares admits that he is impressed by Jinwoo's plan to use the Cup of Reincarnation to turn back time. Suddenly, Antares sees Jinwoo appear using his shadow exchange skill. Antares remarks that he once thought they would meet in eternal slumber, but now both of them are still alive, and one of them must die. Antares introduces himself and asks Jinwoo to do the same. In return, Jinwoo introduces himself and asks Antares if he has any final words. Jinwoo activates his reinforcement skill, and Antares does the same. Both monarchs dash at each other with full force. Jinwoo blocks Antares' attack with his dagger, and their armies clash in a fierce battle. The battlefield erupts into chaos as the Shadow Monarch and the Monarch of Destruction face off in their ultimate confrontation. An uproar begins across America due to the words of a certain fortune teller. She predicts that a god of death will descend upon Earth. Under normal circumstances, this prophecy would have been ignored, but it is delivered by Norma Selner, which makes it a significant issue. Selner warns that a god of death will arrive with a colossal army and that running away is futile as no one can escape death. This event occurred 2 years ago after the Cup of Reincarnation was used. Selner suddenly gained a powerful skill that allows her to predict the future. Her predictions have come true on multiple occasions. For example, she foretold the death of the North Korean dictator, an airplane hijacking, and a stock market crash caused by a sudden increase in housing prices. Since then, Selner has become the center of controversy every time one of her predictions is proven accurate. Now, with her new prophecy, the entire world is in shock. The very next day, a black hole large enough to cover an entire city appears in South Korea. Selner's prophecy makes headlines across the globe. Suddenly, the gate cracks open and citizens are left in shock. Out of nowhere, the gate closes again and people begin to wonder as nothing emerges from it. However, Jinwoo has just used the gate to return to South Korea after defeating all the monarchs. An individual is waiting for Jinwoo and congratulates him on his safe return. The individual asks whether he should call him the Shadow Monarch and expresses confusion about why Jinwoo looks like a middle schooler. Jinwoo explains that people might be worried if they saw him with a full beard, as only 2 years have passed on Earth since he left. Jinwoo expresses his gratitude for having at least one person welcome him back. The individual praises Jinwoo for defeating all the monarchs by himself and remarks that he can still sense millions of soldiers following Jinwoo with every step. Jinwoo asks about the individual's business with him. The individual informs Jinwoo that he has a message from the rulers and requests to continue the conversation elsewhere. Jinwoo agrees, and they both go to an ice cream shop. Jinwoo orders a variety of ice cream flavors. The individual asks why Jinwoo chose an ice cream shop, and Jinwoo explains that he has been craving something sweet after spending so much time in the world of darkness. Jinwoo then asks about the ruler's message. The individual reveals that the rulers are thankful for Jinwoo's help, but are concerned about the impact of his powers on the world. He explains that Jinwoo's power is too much for Earth to handle, and that without mana, the planet would be fragile. The rulers propose transporting Jinwoo to another world that can sustain his powers. Jinwoo simplifies the ruler's request as an attempt to seal him away and questions if they are doing this out of fear of his abilities. The individual nervously responds and shows Selner's prophecy, which has been gaining attention even before Jinwoo's return. He explains that Selner's abilities have improved significantly since Jinwoo's contact with Earth. Jinwoo wonders if his existence is causing these changes and requests the individual to come back another time to discuss the matter further. The individual agrees and leaves. Jinwoo reflects on how every individual has a purpose. He acknowledges that he fulfilled his purpose by stopping all supernatural destruction and ending the Monarchs' invasion. He compares his powers to nuclear fuel, which becomes toxic at the end of its life cycle, and worries that his existence might no longer have a purpose. Jinwoo feels a sense of emptiness in his heart, but suddenly notices someone passing by. He recognizes the person and runs to check on them. The person stops as she catches the scent of the ice cream shop and wonders if ice cream always smelled so good to her. Jinwoo decides to find a new purpose to remain on Earth and resolves to stay because his loved ones are here. Meanwhile, Baek Yoonho becomes a firefighter. Jinho falls asleep in class, and his teacher becomes frustrated with him. Juhee continues her education while Dongsu joins a violent gang. The Hunters Guild members open a new office, and Choi Jongin becomes annoyed with Jina, while Jongsu pursues his passion for the Olympics. Lim Tae-gyu works as a driver for Lee Min-sung. Thomas is adopted by Selner. Chairman Woo becomes a police officer and arrests Kang Tae-shik for his crimes. Meanwhile, the scene shifts back to Jinwoo, and the person he recognizes is Hae-In. Jinwoo meets Hae-In in the new timeline just as he promised.